Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? You dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being with us today. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's in the front of the classroom. Jason is engineering the broadcast. I'm Vincent Finelli. Welcome, Dr. Richard Allen Miller.
Good morning. Good morning, Vic.
Good morning, Rick.
Yeah, good morning, Vietnam.
Yeah. Rick,
you had I used to listen to him when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how old I am.
Yeah. Well, a lot of us still don't understand what Vietnam, the conflict was all about. You know, an undeclared war. They called it the Vietnam War. We just put our children in the meat grinder and let them come out.
Cambodia, I refused to shoot an American. I didn't care if they were breaking the law. I refused to do it. And that's what I remember. That was why there was the peace symbol. That was why there was the protests against the war. And that's where it all started. People were waking up even back then, realizing that the United States itself was the biggest bully in the world. And it all, in my humble opinion, started when Kennedy was shot and that asshole from Texas was brought in as president.
You know, you're talking about OBJ.
That guy and Lady Bird, you know, Lyndon Baines Johnson was a creepy person. And many, many people used to think it was him that assassinated Kennedy because he coveted being president and had agendas.
Well, I happen to be one of them, and I remember that he insisted on being sworn in on the plane the minute that they said that he was in flight, and he learned that President John F. Kennedy was assassinated and died, and Lyndon Baines Johnson insisted on being sworn in as president.
It wasn't John F. Kennedy, by the way, that was the hero. It was his brother. His brother, as Attorney General, was out to stop a bunch of nonsense. And they shot him like they shot his brother. And people don't realize I was there. I remember I was at the University of Washington. It's before I was at Pullman at Washington State. And I was walking across campus when they announced his assassination. And you can see film from where the driver turned around and shot him. And that's the driver of the car. I watched the way his wife tried to get out of the back of the car by getting away from the driver. She was looking straight at him and was crawling off the back of the car trying to get away. That's where it first started to do the so-called plausible deniability thing of where the government had 5 or 6 different things going on, so it got confused on what was really happening.
Class, what we're saying is President John Fitzgerald Kennedy was shot and assassinated in 1963. He was in a motorcade in Dallas, Texas. And there were theories about him being shot from the grassy knoll. There were theories about him being shot from the bookbinding warehouse. And there were multiple theories on this. And then Rick independently just announced that we had never talked about this, but Rick independently from me, we both saw a video that seems to have disappeared. But it was a video of the driver of the limousine that John Fitzgerald Kennedy was in. This driver pulled out a handgun
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, right.
And shot John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And what you saw next was his wife, Jackie Kennedy, leaving, trying to get out of the open cab of this limousine, trying to get out.
The back of the car, so that she, was trying to get away from the driver. Wasn't going sideways. Right, was moving away from the driver. Nobody
she was trying to
said anything
she was
about
trying
that.
She was trying to climb out of the back seat to go toward the trunk of the vehicle as the vehicle went forward. That's what Jackie Kennedy was seen doing. And there was a video of this. So the question is, if her husband had been shot from behind, as we've been told by Lee Harvey Oswald with an Italian Carcano 6.5 millimeter rifle, poorly manufactured rifle that killed probably as many Italians as it killed the enemy from the rifle malfunctioning.
9/11 is going to be remembered exactly the same way, and then we're going to have Fukushima, and the list goes on and on. Las Vegas, the latest I've got on that was the Saudi prince of Saudi Arabia. There was an attempt on his life, and all the rest of it was pile on for agendas to disassociate what was really going on. I can't believe how poor our news reporting is today, literally. It is unbelievable. I remember a time when individuals would stop at nothing to get to the truth. That's no longer the case by any of the major media reporting agencies. It's just they don't care.
Yeah. Well, Rick, we're talking about the assassination of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, and everyone I know remembers exactly where he or she was when they learned about the assassination. Every single person remembers exactly where they were. No one I know says, well, I don't know. I might have been at my grandmother's house. I might have been at school. Everyone knows exactly where they were.
I know.
And that's what you said.
I was walking across campus. I remember when they announced it over the intercoms on the quad in Seattle. It's just, how can they do this and the public doesn't care?
Rick, I remember the news reports saying to the effect, I'm paraphrasing, the government is not going to let out the details because they are so horrific about the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy that the details will not be announced for 75 years, which means that anyone that was alive when that happened will probably not be alive when they announce what happened. Do you remember hearing anything like that?
Yeah, I do. And it's just typical of what civilization is becoming. You know what made America great? You wanted to talk about farming. That is what the basic American farm is what made the United States strong as it did. And when I watched the New Zealand Prime Minister say she can't understand why America is not interested in gun control, I want to know who's paying her salary. How could she be a prime minister and say such a thing? It is an embarrassment to New Zealand, and New Zealand should rise up and get rid of such a bullshit trip. It's crazy.
Rick, when we were attacked in 1941, December 7th, 1941, by the Japanese Imperial Navy, the Navy was afraid to invade the United States after setting Pearl Harbor on fire because they knew that, and the term was, the Americans have guns behind every blade of grass, that there's so many firearms in the United States that the Japanese military could not take on the civilians.
I have another thing. This is a tangent, but I need to say this. Last night I was on GNC radio in New Orleans. It's I really like these kids, and I said BS, and they got frightened that they were going to get kicked off the air, and that is a typical of why are they so intimidated on something I might say when you and I are possibly the single most important people talking on radio right now, according to their ratings. Now, with that said, what's going on with double standards? And why are these Me Too people so afraid of someone declaring, sexual abuse? I could claim sexual abuse because a woman rejected me. I mean, really, this whole thing of leveraging, that's what it's called in Scientology, is reached a point where I'm now going to be outspoken about it and start saying so to radio stations, and how dare them to intimidate people like us when I set the standard on what's appropriate. Now, really, what's going on? And I challenge them. I'm, GNC aside, I like GNC. I like it even over Freedom Slip radios. However, I watched these kids last night frightened at what I might say that would get them kicked off the air. And really, they're doing a really, really good job in radio and should be lauded, not have fear.
Well, here's the problem, Rick. Genesis Communications Network.
Say, though, Vinny?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. But let me tell you
that the owners are listening and get it.
Well, let me tell you what the situation really is. I have the same standards that they do, and I'll tell you why. Because USA Prepares is a nationally syndicated broadcast. The way it works is I have a studio at my farm, and it's a full-fledged studio. It has probably all the equipment that Rush Limbaugh has and in his home. And I can take calls, and I've got a call screen. And so I can remote control from my studio the network in Minnesota at Genesis Communications Network. And we communicate with high-speed digital. And so I can watch the statistics in terms of how the audio is moving back and forth, how the digits are moving back and forth. But because we are nationally syndicated and from GCN, we go out via the network to affiliates, which are AM and FM radio stations. They are monitored 24/7 by the FCC. They can be fined, GCN can be fined, and all of us can be thrown off the air. That's what it's about. Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with us, class. If you'd like to go to his website, richardallenmiller.com, Richard, A-L-A-N, Miller, M-I-L-L-E-R.com. Rick, you want to talk about...
Hey, Vincent, I didn't mean to interrupt or cause trouble. When I watch George Carlin, I see a double standard here. And I'm wondering why with FTC and bullying. And when I look at the media and how the fear has translated from radio over to writing, and then individuals at CNN or whatever being fired, I have to be a little bit in everybody's face on why is that.
Yeah, and you can, and it's just that profanity is something we can do without. All of us.
And really, GNC should be applauded for the kinds of individuals that they try to bring on. I'm not a gutter snipe. I'm extremely educated. And if I use slang to get a point across, there's a reason I did it from my English literature degree. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, I'm concerned about media, big time.
Okay, Rick, Genesis Communications Network, the network that we originate this broadcast from, is the largest alternative network there is. It's the largest. And it's the fourth largest radio network in the United States. So if you look at all radio, we're number 4. And if you look at alternative radio...
Is that the guy I met that owns that?
No, he's number 2 in terms of alternative radio. Yeah, Republic Broadcasting.
Really impressed with him. I've been impressed with most of the people I've met through you. I've been very impressed.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting. You're talking about John Statmiller.
Yeah,
He owns,
yeah.
yes, he owns Republic Broadcasting Network. And he is so kind that he takes this broadcast every day and airs it on his radio network, Republic Broadcasting, the next day. So tomorrow, you and I will be on Republic Broadcasting replay from 6 in the morning to 8 in the morning Central Time on republicbroadcasting.org. And so I just wanted to say,
I met him and was extremely impressed with somebody with that level of power being receptive and open to someone like myself. I was impressed.
Yeah.
But,
hey, I got to tell you, the faculty of USA Prepares, I was going to say this, but there's no way I can say it humbly. So I'll just say it. I believe that the faculty, now I'm not including myself, I'm just including the faculty.
Stop it.
Everybody but me is the best there is in broadcasting. I believe that the intellect of USA Prepares faculty is the best there is as a radio broadcaster.
Being dogged so badly when all we're trying to do is empower.
Well, that's the problem. That's the problem.
That's a big question that everybody should now be asking to everybody else. And if you do that, watch how things will change, because that is the rule.
Well, I can tell you, Rick, it's really simple. There's a little microcosm of this. And you know that I'm running for the board of directors again for the electric cooperative. They are doing everything. Well, yeah, I just think it's fun. To me, it's amusing. But they are doing
a whole bunch of good old boy networks.
That's exactly why I'm doing it. They can't stand me because they think that, actually they know that if I'm chosen by the membership, I'm going to cause heads to roll. The good old boy network will be over if I get in, because it'll be impossible for them to get anything done according to the old rules. They will be tied up. Nobody will go home from the meetings. Nothing will happen because they will have to answer my questions.
Well,
and I've got more questions.
For the first time, accountable.
Right. That's exactly right.
That's what we're talking about with media. Being accountable.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, the difference is we're just a bunch of volunteers who are passionate. They are paid mercenaries, and they can't compete with us because we're doing it because we want to. They're doing it because they have to pay the mortgage and the car payments. And they've been bribed and threatened, just like politicians. That's why you don't get the correct information. We'll be right back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us, and let me just mention something about why these other broadcasters, I'm not talking about us, but the ones you're talking about, were concerned about what was being said. And that's because the FCC will fine the affiliates, the AM and FM stations. So there's a restaurant in Springfield, Missouri called Fuddruckers, and it's a hamburger joint, and they have hamburgers and French fries, and they've got this fixings table, and you can put on some diced tomatoes and chilies and onions and relish and hot peppers and olives and lettuce and sliced tomatoes on your hamburger. And you can then add ketchup and mustard and even warm cheese, like a cheese sauce on top of your hamburgers. Well, they sell the hamburgers you can get a child's meal, you can get an adult meal, and you can get different sizes. And they've got this menu. But what they don't tell you is, they don't advertise this, but they have a family pack. And the family pack contains 2 children's hamburgers and 2 adult hamburgers, and it comes with drinks. And it's about $20-something. It used to be less than 20, but now it's, more than 20. But it's less expensive if you order the family pack of 4 and eat in a restaurant than if you order individually. And you could select whatever drink you want. You could have coffee, and you'd get a coffee cup. If you wanted a soft drink, you'd get a soft drink cup. Or you could select a bottle of beer. Well, what happened is they shut the beer down. Why? Because, and this is what the government does. The government is really interested in fining people, taking advantage of them. So a family walked in, a family of 4, and they ordered this family meal. And one of the people in the family was not of age to drink beer, 21. So the government came down and handed Fuddruckers a huge fine. Huge. So now, because, and I think it was a setup, I think they did it on purpose, I think it was entrapment, so they could fine Fuddruckers and say, hey, I've got a notch on my fine belt, right? That's what the government does. So that's why these young people are so concerned, because the government is listening. And I know that the government is listening to USA Prepares whenever we're on our affiliates. They literally have recording information connected to the internet so that the government can listen to everything that's being said on the radio, as well as on your telephones and so forth. So I just wanted to share that with you, Rick. That's what's going on. That's why they're concerned, because they are being monitored.
You know, I remember when I didn't have to get a permit to have a rifle.
Absolutely.
I remember a time when I didn't need a permit to drive to a park.
I can't buy dynamite. You know why? Because they now require a permit to buy dynamite. Now, you know, class, it may seem, for those who are not initiated, you may think, why would Vinny need dynamite? Well, I got to tell you, the old method of removing tree stumps was dynamite. You cut down a tree, now you've got this tree stump. What are you going to do with it? And I'm talking about big tree stumps. So you put some dynamite in there, you light the fuse, and boom, now you can pull the tree stump out with a tractor. But I can't buy dynamite anymore because the government requires permits to buy dynamite.
Yeah,
now,
but you can make nitroglycerin with Chemcraft chemistry set as a 12-year-old like I used to.
Yeah, and we did too. But you know, all that stuff is frowned upon. And contact explosives with nitric acid and iodine crystals, you know, that's frowned upon too, right?
So
the class don't do that.
It's time to revolt.
Well, I agree. And one of the things that needs to be in the sights of the revolt are these LED lights. That was one of the things that I have on my list to talk about.
That's one of the things we can talk about, because the police in Oregon are using them in such a way that they hurt your eyes even a mile away.
Yeah, and the police in Oregon don't want to be outdone by any other police department, and neither does the Springfield Police Department. So,
well, it's a
all
form
around
of bullying. It is, in fact, a type of bully.
Yeah, well, that's what cops are. Those are the guys who were in high school that like pushing people around, and now they have a license to do it. They have a badge of immunity, so they can kill people.
But it only takes one or two in a group to cause the group to look the other way and allow bullying.
Mm-hmm. Well, Rick, here's something that you have talked about, and I've talked about, and Joey has talked about. And I talked with Joey about this last night. We were on the phone together for a while. And I'm talking about Joey in Michigan. We were talking about these LED lights. Now, yes, the police lights, they have the red ones, the blue ones, the white ones. They absolutely are blinding and intimidating, and they're awful.
They're hard on your eyes. Actually, the long ultraviolet from them is toxic. Now, why would they do that when they're there to serve and protect? You can absolutely see them without those LED forms.
You're right, but it's not just them. It's these drivers with these new cars that have these ultra expensive, high current demand LEDs that are blinding as well. So these, And these people like these things. They like blinding you when they're approaching you. They have no idea that you may lose your path and not know where you are because you can't see, and you might do a head-on collision with them. Now, it's probably going to take that to get these headlights banned. And we're talking about these ultra blue, really piercing automobile headlights.
W.C. Fields did a movie like that where he was a wealthy millionaire, and he had cars that went in front of him on purpose so that he could take his vehicle and smash it, and then get another vehicle and smash it into it. I remember that movie.
Well, here's what's happening. There are articles on the internet that say things like LED lights in your house can cause, let me say this very carefully, irreversible damage to the eyes. Irreversible damage to the eyes. Irreversible damage to the eyes and lead to vision-robbing conditions. Now, there's this French study, and this is from Daily Mail, that there is this organization in France that wants to limit the maximum exposure to LED lights because they are phototoxic and they cause permanent eye damage. Now, how bad is this? Well, Joey and you and I have been talking about this for quite a while, that we know that they are painful to see. But what has happened with the ilk of the Hillary Clintons of the world, we have destroyed the incandescent light bulb manufacturing in the United States. I don't know of any real large, viable, incandescent, regular old light bulb manufacturer. Sylvania used to make them. General Electric used to make them. They used to be made by the Edison Light Bulb Company, the Mazda Light Bulb Company. There used to be a lot of light bulb companies, and you could buy 4 of them for $1. You could go to the dollar store or pretty much anywhere and buy 4 regular screw-in light bulbs for $1, 25 cents a piece. Well, that's hard to do now because nobody makes them in this country. They're made in Indonesia. We sold our manufacturing equipment abroad. We don't make them here. We don't blow the glass here. We don't make the filaments here. We don't fabricate the light bulbs here. We don't pack them, but they are packed in other countries. We can't have them here because Hillary Clinton decided we needed to get more energy efficient and go to the compact fluorescent light bulbs, which are toxic every way you look at it. You break one of those in a school, and they call a hazmat team from the city because of the mercury in them. So that didn't work out so well. So now we have LEDs. Where did they come from? Do we have any LED manufacturers in the United States? No. They come from China. And what happens? These intense LED lights that we have in our homes to use 1/5 of the electricity of an incandescent bulb are causing damage to our eyes, permanent eye damage. That's where we are right now, Rick. And what is the answer? The answer is really hard to fix because we've gotten rid of our manufacturing. That's what we do in the United States. We don't need to make shirts here anymore. We don't need to make hoses here anymore. We don't need to make fan belts here anymore. Hey, we've got Mexico to do that. We've got China to do that. We don't make bearings here anymore.
I remember when Al Gore was putting his presidential team together, and he came to visit me, and he told me, we don't need agriculture anymore. We'll let third world countries do that, and that we should focus more on high tech. Now, that was Al Gore that said that. And my comment back to him was, what planet did he grow up on?
I met Al Gore in 1980.
Fact, the agriculture is a bottom line on what made America great. Arms and defending ourselves is a minor in comparison to the importance of American agriculture. And what we did wrong with cargo and the rest of it is we focused on storable commodities rather than non-storable commodities. There's alternative agriculture and there's agriculture. And which one is where the American farmer was not grain like wheat. That's where we first started giving away the trade deficit to China. And putting sanctions on them isn't going to work any more than subsidizing farming by giving them grants and leg up my background, I was one of Chuck Walter's pallbearers. And I remember being in Springfield, in the governor's mansion when the new Secretary of Agriculture was named. I was there because I was part of that. And I remember the importance of what agriculture is and what it is not. And we don't get the importance of it. And so, your farm looks beautiful, by the way. You should be very proud. That cow looked like it was going to be worth a whole bunch more than the cow down the street.
We'll tell you what we're talking about when we come back, class. Doc Ram. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us, and class, what Rick was talking about is I sent him a picture of our farm just a day or two ago. And it's the field, and grass is really tall. It's up to your knees. And we turned out some cows. We move the cows from field to field to field every day. And the reason we do that is we want to give the grass a chance to rest. And it's really working. So our field, it was really kind of rough when we bought this farm. Actually, it was really rough. It looks absolutely gorgeous right now. Hard to believe how we've turned this field around. And the credit goes to Mrs. Finelli and our son. I mean, we've worked really hard.
Well, that's what you do. That's why farming is so difficult. You did a good job.
So, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. George in New Hampshire, it's so good to hear your voice.
Same here, Ben. Same here, Dr. Rick.
Hi there.
I just wanted to log in, if I could, just on that LED. I noticed they're deploying them in a lot of cities and towns where they're changing the lamppost lights to LED. And I noticed that if I go out, like in the morning, and it's still, dark out, it'll be like there's pools of light. And I can only imagine what that's going to be doing to the children and the people who are basically passing under those lights. And I've noticed, too, a number of cars, especially like I've seen Mercedes, things like that, they have those LED headlights. And I find them very painful. When they are there, I just avert my eyes while still keeping my eye on the road. But the other thing I'd warn you is that I noticed I stopped a doctor. She was going to shine an LED light, flashlight into my eyes to check something. And I stopped her. I said, wait a minute, don't shine that into my light. I said, don't you see the warning label on that thing? I said, this could damage your eyes. Well, she didn't argue with me, and she was old enough, but I'll bet money after I left she was continuing to use that flashlight. But the way you can tell the LED flashlight is the little square. There's a little square that's yellow, and if you look inside there, you won't see a bulb. I know you know this, Vincent, and I know you, Dr. Rick, you know this, but for the uninitiated audience, if it doesn't have like a regular bulb, don't shine it in any people's eyes. Just try to just use it appropriately because, like you say, it emits that harmful, I guess, what do we call it? That span of light.
UVC.
That I just find it really wreaks havoc with mine.
Yes, and class, what George is talking about is he's saying if you look at if the light is off, let me say it a different way, off, and make sure it's off, then you can look at the lens and you'll see this yellowish square, very small square, and that is the LED surface-mounted device. Okay, and that's what we're talking about, not a bulb, but this little square that's behind the lens. And your computer screens use LEDs. And here's something that's really important. And I don't know why people do this, but they like looking at their computer screens in the dark, a darkly lit room, so your pupils dilate, let more light in from the screen. It's worse. It's worse if you use your screen, whether it's a television screen or computer screen, a flat screen, in the dark than it is if you have light in the room because your eye dilates. Rick, any comments?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay. So, class, you're right, George. Mercedes has these high voltage lighting systems. They require special electronics. They're really expensive. Shame on Mercedes for doing it. Now, I think Mercedes was a really good car company before they Americanized the cars with all these doodads and accessories that make the cars impossible to live with, impossible to service, impossible to afford. That's what Mercedes has done. But in Europe, you'll find that Mercedes lasts a long time, and they're used as taxi cabs. They're used for all kinds of purposes, but they're not the same. The difference is the Europeans are more Spartan. They don't have all of these accessories that Americans demand. We demand the stupidity. Not me, not you, not George, not Rick, but others do. So the best car I ever bought in my entire life, and I've had some really neat cars, is this old Mercedes 1996 diesel, not even a turbo. It's got no features at all except it has electric windows and air conditioning. Other than that, it's plain Jane. And it's the best car, the most reliable, because it doesn't have any of that stuff that I don't need. George, would you like to hold and come back with us after the top of the hour?
Yeah, if I may. Thank you.
Sounds great. Everyone all set? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. George in New Hampshire's with us. We were talking about LED lighting, how they are blinding, and how the automobile manufacturers seem to think that this is cool to blind oncoming vehicles. I disagree. I only have the standard cheap bulbs, the halogen bulbs for our vehicles. I don't have any of these LED lights on any of our vehicles. I don't. The only piece of equipment that I have with LED lights is a tow dolly. And the reason is that the tow dolly has plastic fenders. And they flop around so much that they break the incandescent filaments probably within an hour of installing them. So the manufacturer decided that they could not use standard filament bulbs. They had to go to the LED to take the abuse of the flopping plastic fenders. And these are just turn signals and stoplights. They are not headlights. So they're not all that bright, and they're not the kind of thing that we're talking about here. Other than that, I don't have LED lights. I don't want them. However, we have been duped, conned into getting rid of our light bulb manufacturing, incandescent light bulb manufacturing companies have sold their equipment to the Asians, and that's where our light bulbs come from now. So if you want to try to really get incandescent light bulbs, you probably can. They're going to be more expensive than they used to be. We don't make them in this country. So the ones that you can buy at Lowe's and Home Depot and everywhere else, that's going to be the LED types that are causing us to lose our vision. And you want proof? Do your eyes hurt, class? Do people you know say, geez, I've got to get a new prescription for my eyeglasses? Are they saying that? I'll bet the answer is absolutely, positively yes. George, any comments?
Well, I know that the Germans, when they realized that these things were going to go away, they started stockpiling regular incandescent bulbs. And the Germans are pretty practical people overall. May I just say one thing? You mentioned something about Al Gore. Do you realize that on Al Gore's property he has a zinc mine that routinely pollutes the river that's next to the property, and that he pays the fine that they levy on him because it's cheaper for him rather than have him clean up the mess? So there's that big blustery blowhard there, a legend in his own mind. And unfortunately, like I said, the fact, don't get me wrong, I don't have any uses for the Bushes, but by the same token, I don't have any issue. I mean, to have those two guys, the Bush and Gore, run for president and realize how close they came, it's being forced down our throat. We're being given two choices that really aren't choices at all. It's basically the lesser of two evils, basically. And I really think that I don't even think it's even the choices we have today. It's like they're not really worthwhile candidates on either camp, in my opinion.
Yeah, you mentioned the lesser of two evils. The way I think of it is the evil of two lessers.
Aptly put.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the candidates, we get to the candidates that are selected for our voting pleasure. We always go, except for the last time, how come we can't get anybody good to run? And I explained that yesterday when I talked about the Laclede Electric Cooperative, where they feel that you should not diminish a person's right to be on the board of directors because they don't know what they're doing, because they haven't had life experiences that are commensurate with the job. Just because someone works at Walmart as a cashier doesn't mean that person should not be a director of an electric cooperative that's responsible for delivering electricity and if the electricity stops, 90% of the people connected to it will die within 30 days. That's how it goes. But that's why we have candidates, and we hold our noses when we vote for this ilk, because we go, why? Why can't they get somebody good? Well, they did have somebody good. The last time, Donald Trump. And in 1992, we had somebody good. His name was H. Ross Perot. But we ran him over, right? He was a kook. He actually understood business. He probably would have been a wonderful president. H. Ross Perot. I was in his company. I was at H. Ross Perot's EDS, Electronic Data Systems Corporation. I was there. I saw the computers. I talked with his top brass. I met them. I spent the day there back in the 1980s. And I was so impressed. I said all the way back in the car, I was with some of the guys who were building a data center. I was one of the guys building a data center for a bank. And all the way back, I said, wow, if we could just have somebody like that run for president, we'd have it made. And then about 7 years later, he ran for president. And Bill Clinton stomped him, actually paid him off. And he's also threatened at the same time. But that's H. Ross Perot. Yeah, please continue, George.
Well, I had a question that ties in with this for Dr. Rick, is that I know, Dr. Rick, you trained super soldiers from the military, and I know that the Russians as well are, not that I blame the Russians for everything going bad in the world, but the Russians have super soldiers as well, and there's some information that's been floating around saying that other countries have sent their super soldiers into our borders, and supposedly, psychically, they're concentrating on disrupting the country, probably in many ways, but not the least of which that they're using their superior mental abilities to influence and make the leadership make bad decisions. I was wondering if you could weigh in on that, Dr. Rick.
Well, hokey pokey, you put your left hand in and you shake it all about. The actual constructs of psychic attack is in the mind of the beholder. And while imagination is reality, all of us have intuition, and including Russia. And Russia has always been superstitious, like Kalugina. Back in the 70s, they called it psychic discoveries behind the Iron Curtain. But really, it wasn't Russia. It was Czechoslovakia that had the high-end physics going on. And I have to say, there's a lot of hokey-pokey out there in terms of what psychic attacks mean and what they do not mean. And basically, what made us God's favored is that we have choice. And we have a lot of different, and I'm writing about this right now, trying to finish up the non-local mind. We have a lot of disinformation coming in. Our senses, our normal five senses, are not really senses at all. They're filters. And because they're filters, they distort. And that's why consciousness, per se, is now deemed a dream state that does not have as much content to reality as some dream states like lucid dreaming. Now, these are Aboriginal constructs where they placed more emphasis on this kind of an input than that kind of an input. And what's happening now is that the military is waking up to the fact that instinct is an extremely important tool in your toolbox of altered states of consciousness, and that if you're trained how to listen to yourself, you will not make as many mistakes as if you go by your five senses. Now, that's the first protocol that started the SEAL program, was ESP induction through forms of self-hypnosis. You would put yourself into an altered state that was not consciousness, but right there, and your ability in guessing increased 400 times over where you were using logic and Occam's razor. It turns out your first thought that comes in your mind is always the most correct. And if you learn to study that part of self, inner dialogue, that's where real answers are found. They're not out there in what you're sampling in the universe. It's inside and what you sense. That's why dreams are not about symbols. They're about feelings. It's a higher form of information than physical plane. How you feel about it. That's why in reality, like books like Dune have always stressed the importance of EQ. EQ over IQ, because IQ is the physical plane, EQ is how you feel about it. It's more information about the same thing. And once you get that construct, now you realize that we're being assaulted from all angles right now. I have one paper I wrote called The New Directions in Mind Control, which is altering our food so that our bodies are becoming obese. And when you have a Barbie doll of what you think is the ideal shape, you are right out of the gate designed for failure. And that's how they control us, with these subliminal signals that we're not aware of. And why I make a distinction between empowerment with intent over purpose. Intent is when you're coming from a place of wounding. This is what makes you different than me. What actually happened to you and how it changed you. Now, that wound, like your girlfriend left and your dog died, like a country western song, causes you to whine and play broken wing, and it's what distinguishes you differently than somebody else. And once you understand what a wound is, sometimes those wounds can be turned into blessings.
Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with us, richardallenmiller.com, Richard, ALANMILLER.com. George is with us. And Rick, you were talking about the how to think with your gut. Do you want to continue? Or?
Well, I should have done it like they do on radio, where this is no drug for and then the commercial.
I just got a call from one of those guys during the break. He's a lawyer.
Oh, man.
He's a lawyer. I'm not kidding.
Be limber here, because when I wind up for the pitch, I have a certain way I like to move my arm, and if I don't move it quite right, I don't get there from here.
Yeah. Well, literally, we got a call from Mrs. Finelli. Took the call. It was a lawyer who heard some of my comments about hydraulics, and they want to start a class action suit. So they want to know, I guess, more about what my point of view is. Interesting. So the little guy, that would be us, we've had it. We've absolutely had it. And I told the family one more time yesterday the following. Okay, guys, here is the new family policy. We are no longer loyal to any corporation that sells us things because they have no loyalty to us. So here's the new Finelli plan. We will buy at the best value. And if they continue to have the best value, we'll continue buying from them. If they don't, we're moving on. It's as simple as that, because no one has loyalty to us. Nobody.
Well, they shot Sears and Roebuck. They shot Santa Claus. They shot, I mean, really, man. Oh, what's going on?
Yes. And I don't think people realize how important Sears,
Craftsman,
Roebuck.
Snap-on, value, where it wasn't sold as cheapest, it was best buy.
Well,
Today, we no longer have that option. We only have selection of which is cheapest.
well, yeah, and we've destroyed our tool industry. There was New Britain Tools, S.K. Wayne, her brand. There were so many great brands. Williams of tools, Husky. I'm not talking about the company that Home Depot sells. I'm talking about Husky back in the 1970s.
Yeah,
Absolutely
Sheffield,
wonderful.
where you bought something from England steel that didn't come from Taiwan.
That's right. That's right. And so that's all gone. And you know, I was putting some tools away yesterday. I have a quick comment to make, and then George, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So number 9. Why am I saying number 9? Because yesterday our son and I and Mrs. Finelli were replacing the hubs on his 1999 Dodge 2500 turbo diesel truck, 4-wheel drive. This is the 9th hub, 9th, N-I-9 front hub. That's in addition to the 2 that it came with. They wear out. And when they wear out, they wobble. And when they wobble, they damage the disc rotors and the disc brakes. So these bearings have failed, and it's front wheel bearings, but they're called hubs on 4-wheel drive vehicles. They wear out, and they're all made in China. They come with a lifetime warranty, but they don't mean lifetime, because when you bring them back for the 3rd time, they go, that's it, no more. We're not going to give you any more, because you guys are obviously doing something that's causing these bearings to fail. Well, the bearings are failing because they're cheap Chinese junk, and we don't make them in this country anymore. Regardless of the brand that you buy, whether you buy them at O'Reilly's or you buy them at AutoZone, they are Chinese junk. And they wear out. And I don't know the cost to replace one, but I think we do it ourselves. But I believe it's easily $200 in labor to replace a front hub on a Dodge 2500 turbo diesel truck. I believe it's $200. That's without the part. That's just labor. So we're on number 9. And O'Reilly's thinks that it's us, and they won't warranty him anymore. So the first ones we bought were lifetime warranty. But they go, no, we don't mean that anymore. We used to mean that, but we don't mean it anymore because we're selling junky parts that don't last very long. That's what's happening. I'd love to hear your comments, George, when we come back. I'm sorry it took me so long to say that. But we are trapped. We can't buy American bearings anymore. Formerly the best in the world. Can't buy them anymore. They come with American names on the boxes, but inside the box, make in China. We'll be right back. So, class, very quickly, I've mentioned replacing the front wheel bearings / hubs on this Dodge pickup truck for the 9th time. And I just looked it up. The cost of doing this is between $524 and $602. The labor of that would be $167 to $245. My guess, off the top of my head, was $200. So I was right on the money. Bottom line is, if we had to pay a mechanic to do this over and over and over again for these cheap replacement of these Chinese junk bearings, it'd be $5,400 for the 9 times that we have done this. 9. And we're not done. We're not done, because I know in about 12 months or 18 months we're going to be doing it again and again. George, any comments on these cheap Chinese parts? Have you heard about this in your neck of the woods?
Well, I mean, I can say that I know the abiding aim of the Chinese leadership is to overtake and basically leave us in the dust. And who's to say that we know that a lot of the food products that were made for the pet foods killed a lot of the dogs and cats that
including
the owners,
one of mine. Including one of mine.
Right. And they said that I know that they moved, and you'll say, what does this have to do with pots and bearings? Well, the penicillin manufacturing that was located up in in upstate New York moved over to China some years ago. And our FDA says, we want to inspect your drug-producing factories to see if they're up to code and safe sanitation and so on. And the Chinese said no.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. They have no due diligence on what you import from China. I used to be an exporter, and I was interested in the bitter orange synephrine. And when I used to represent synephrine, I stopped representing it because what I was getting was not what they said it was. And that is across the board, and that was my personal experience being an import-exporter. And I was doing tonnage. Imagine what Costco and Walmart are doing.
Well, I'll say from what I understand with Costco, I know that they treat their employees pretty well. But if you were to go to a Walmart, I can't say that that was the case.
Let's try
makes a profit.
I grew feverfew in Northern California and shipped bales to China where they made their brand name, and I forget what it is called now, to make feverfew in tablets and capsules. It was cheaper to send my raw material to China and have it come back as Centrum. Yeah, it was Centrum. And then just taking it down to City of Industry and having it tableted or capsulated here in America. Now, what they did was they were removing some of the feverfew, so it wasn't pure feverfew, it had filler. And they do that here in America with Oregon grapefruit in golden seal, because the hydrasine and berberine levels are slightly different as markers. And I can tell you that in the pharmaceutical trade, you are not getting what is said on the label of the bottle, and that's even from America now. And the FDA is not doing their job correctly. And that is me as an experienced raw material supplier.
Well,
welcome to the New World Order, and why the trade wars with China are going to fail, because the elite globalists want us to fail. And farming is the first way they did it, with education and our children as number two. Our children are our single most important natural resource, even over farming. And both of them are in the toilet.
Rick, you wanted to talk about education. Why don't you just jump right in? Because what you're about to say is... No.
You don't want to... I will get kicked off the air. I think it is abominable what California is doing. Even the teachers are in revolt, and who cares? Who says that, and why? Let's start with your governor in California. We can, nail in on it. Let's get to personalities and what they're doing and why. Education. No. You do not want me to do this, because I will, with language, get kicked off the air. It is atrocious what they're doing.
All right, don't do it. But let me jump in then. So we used to have what was called a valedictorian, number one in the graduating class, and a salutatorian, which is number two. Well, to make everybody feel better, Mason High School in Ohio, which is outside of Cincinnati, decided that's too much pressure. So instead of the two honors bestowed to the two highest achievers of the high school graduating class, Mason High School in Cincinnati suburbs is going to go to a different system. they're going to award students with a 4.0 grade point average. They're going to call them summa cum laude. And with 3.75 to 3.99 GPA, magna cum laude. And then those between 3.51 and 3.75 will just be cum laude. That's what they're doing. And to make things a little easier on the students, because life must be really tough for them, they don't have to work or anything like that. Well, the high school is going to begin classes 30 minutes later, more sleep time, and they're going to reduce the amount of homework after school and during summer vacation. So the students are, it's going to be a little easier on them because it's so tough. Class, if you think about high school, that was nothing compared to the pressure of trying to own a home, pay for the apartment, try to keep your car going uphill and working, and the brakes working when you go downhill. So now what we've done is we've said, let's lower the standards. Let's lower the standards. So now everybody can...
Yeah, so that there's no child left behind. Let's bring in some non-speaking English, and we won't call it Esperanto anymore. We'll call it Spanish. What is going on is absolutely incorrect, just like allotropic medicine that treats symptoms, not the cause. And when you talk about allotropic medicine and the placebo is less than 10%, how is it that psychedelics, which are against the law except in Denver, Colorado now, are now healing someone on a spiritual level, and it proliferates down into the physical, and oh, guess what? That took placebo up to 60%. Now, how does that work? Well,
Rick,
one size does not fit all. And what is healthy for one person is not for another because we're uniquely different. How dare medicine try to jam us all into one stage?
Rick, I was a teacher during the W. Bush administration. The guy who says that he's, he had Bush-isms. He's been his quote, I've been misunderestimated all my life, end quote, of George W. Bush. No Child Left Behind was his legacy. And I was in the classroom during No Child Left Behind. And I said, this is not No Child Left Behind. This means no child has a chance.
That's exactly correct. If you guys listening out there in the audience want to do an experiment with me, I challenge you to go to the grade school tomorrow and sit in on what they're teaching our children in grade school this moment, and then raise an issue with the principal.
I've done it.
Watch what happens next.
I've done it. I have done that. And class, you can do this. If you have a child in school, or even if you don't, you can say, hey, I just want to check in with the front office. I'm here, and I'm going to be visiting today.
Yeah,
I'm going to be visiting
their
today.
behavior.
Yeah, and you're allowed to do that. You are paying. It's a public school. You can, they may say, well, you need an appointment because we have to have a chaperone to make sure that, you're not going to be tearing up the school. They may do that. But I have gone to schools and I've said, I'm here without an appointment. I just show up and say, I'm here to visit. I'd like to see the school in progress. No warning. I've sat in the lunchroom. I've walked the halls. I've walked in the classrooms. And I hear the teachers saying things, and this is language I don't use, but I'll use it on the air. Shut up! That's what teachers say. Teachers tell children in elementary school to shut up. They threaten them with taking them to the office. It's a circus. Now, why is that? I was a teacher, and I never had to raise my voice. I never had to tell my class to be quiet. I never had to say, hey, y'all, pay attention now. This is important. Never had to do any of that because I was prepared. And I made the class educational and entertaining. And it takes extra work to do that. But I did that. And I told stories. I lectured. I let the students participate. I let them choose their own grading system. But it was a guided democracy. And it worked. It absolutely worked. So you don't have to yell at the students. All you have to do is encourage them. You have to be there. You have to lead by example. And you have to do the right thing all the time. And you have to be fair. And you better know what you're doing as well. And if you do all those things, it really works. It really works. And you don't have to have the children sit in rows. I had them sit in circles. My classroom was in circles. No rows. No matrix. George, I'd love to hear your comments when we come back. Class, Dr. Richard Allen Miller just challenged all of us to go visit the local school in your neck of the woods, the elementary schools, the middle schools, the high schools, and just walk around, just show up and stop at the front office and say, I'm here to visit. And just see for yourself what $10,000 a year buys for 9 months of education for the average student in the public training camp in the United States. That's $1,100 a month for 21 days of the month, or $53 a day. See if you think you're getting your money's worth. George?
Well, one of the best proponents of the overall of our education system, I'm going to go back to the basics, was Charlotte Iserby. And she was the one who wrote the book that it's like a buy phrase now. It's called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. And originally you can see that the American school system, at least in the 20th century, were training children to be good little factory workers, where they worked under supervision, they were quiet, and it suppressed any real ingenuity or talent that the child would have innately. And it would basically have them go out with just really with the edges cut off of them from their thinking processes and everything else. I'm sure, Dr. Rick, you want to weigh in more on this, but Charlotte Iserby, Iserbyt, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. And to let somebody like Gorbachev, the former Soviet leader there, he is a very wealthy man, and he lives across the Potomac from Washington, D.C., and they have bought his and other Soviet training applications to be placed into our schools. And there's been a lot of, and even under Carter, I'll wrap it up with this, is that even with under Carter, he had this woman who was the head of education, and she was quoted as saying that, as I have seen Red Chinese education, and that is our model for the future. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically the sum total of what she said. So is it any wonder now that they're socializing our children for perversion? But as far as to teach them valuable or enhance their abilities to think for themselves, to be able to solve problems, to be able to build on their education, you can see we're falling down flatter on our face and with a laughing.
Worse than that, there is a thing that I posted yesterday and then took off my website because it was over the edge, where a young girl was talking about why there are shootings in high schools now. I would not like to be going to school at this time with the way they conduct business. And that's me saying it. This is crazy. And somebody has got to start saying something, because it's going from bad to worse, and California is leading the row on that. Oh, by the way, California and Paradise, guess what? Just like I said it was. It's going to be given to China as part of our trade deficit. Go figure. The whole thing stinks. And it's time all of us, not just me talking to you listening on the couch, you need to physically go down to the grade school and demand a change. If everybody did that was listening just on this one radio show, watch what would happen next.
So I met with the faculty right after the 3 o'clock bell in the local school down the road from us when I was visiting, and I said,
"Yeah, have everybody at your next convention take a day off, and we go to the different schools simultaneously, causing trouble as a militant group, demanding changes in our education now."
So all the teachers had their heads down in the library, and I said, "What do you guys do?" They said, "We're working on reports." I said, "For what?" "Well, for the federal government." I said, "Why?" They said, "Well, we have to do it." I said, "No, you don't. Stop doing it." They said, "We don't have time to teach because we're busy filling out these reports." I said, "Stop. Don't do it. Don't turn them in."
It's all done with intent.
Absolutely. But, there's plenty of time to play ball. There's plenty of time to support athletics. But there's not enough time to support reading, writing, and arithmetic, and history, and science.
And all the rest of it. It's crazy.
George, thank you for calling in. I'll see you tomorrow. Dr. Rick, thanks for being with us.